my generation is kind of soft in that area where they're like, well, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. It's, well, do you want to make them a better professional, or are you more concerned with how they feel?
Hey everyone, welcome to the Make More Podcast. I'm Matt Heslin, I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. I've got my beautiful daughter Brittany here today. Brett, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Dad?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Doing awesome. Yeah. Had a major fall playing pickleball the other day. Just cracked something, so hobbled in here this morning.
The joys of being semi-retired. It's tough out there.
It's tough out there. Playing pickleball is not necessarily for the...
It's not for the weak.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, so a little pain here today, but we're going to go through this podcast. We're going to talk about leadership today.
Yeah.
I want to talk about making more through great leadership. You've had leadership experience. I've had leadership experience. I think we've had a unique opportunity, and we have a unique opportunity to share with our guests all of the leadership principles we've deployed to make our businesses successful and hopefully help them make their businesses successful.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I mean, I guess I'll just ask you, like, how do you define leadership? I think that's inherently different to so many people. Either it's like, I think, a textbook answer or experience-based in how they've led.
So I define leadership as one's ability to bring resources, capital, and people together for a common goal. And the leader's role is to bring those resources together, create the vision, create the mission, get everybody in alignment, moving forward in the same direction together.
So you really would call the leader like a vision master.
A vision master is a good explanation. It's the vision master, but it's also the person who can get those people to follow that vision, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've always found that's critical to good leadership, and I've led a lot of organizations, is authenticity. You know, I mean, the people need to know you're authentic, you're the real deal, you're competent, you're capable, you're qualified, and you have the ability to garner their respect. I think that authenticity is really critical if you're going to be a leader. And by authentic, I mean real. You know, you share with them the good news, you share with them the bad news, you share with them the rewards. You get everybody going on the same train in the same direction. And I think that all comes with experience and time in the leadership role. And it's a learned process. It's not something you get out of a textbook in college, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So in terms of authenticity, which is, you know, how I've led my teams as well, that's what you've taught me to do. And it's something that I stand by. Would you say authenticity is a form of vulnerability in leadership?
Absolutely. That's a really good point, Brittany. Great point. Because if you can't be vulnerable, people don't take you as real.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you need to cry in front of your troops.
No.
But it does mean when the chips are down, you have to authentically tell them
the chips are down.
Yeah. And we're vulnerable here. Yeah. And then that goes back to the vision of, but here's how we're going to get out of it.
Yeah. So if I can relay this back to a couple books that I know we've read that have really formulated both of our mindsets when it comes to leadership. I don't know if you've read this, but Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. The biggest takeaway from that book for me was braving vulnerability. And she really talks about vulnerability being an asset in leadership and how many people don't lean into that. But then in the 1 Minute Manager, I think if you combine those elements together, the 1 Minute Manager really talks about your people knowing the value and the asset that they are to the team to accomplish the goal and the vision that the leader has communicated to their team that they're all to accomplish, that they're all supposed to accomplish together. Everybody knows their role, right. But it also breeds trust, responsibility, vulnerability to come to the leader and say, hey, like, this is what's working, this isn't what's working. And I think you have all those elements kind of together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes great sense. You know, it reminds me of a book that I read by Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence. And what he did was he went out and he researched hundreds of organizations worldwide to find the very best leadership teams in the countries that he visited and in the companies that he visited. And Tom Peters found that the difference between good companies and great companies, which is another book, Good to Great by Collins, was they did the little things much better. The small, like he would give the example of the flip down trays in the airplanes. If they had coffee stains on them, could you really trust that the engines were done right? And so his point was, the great companies do the little things right with consistency. And consistency is another word I would use for our leadership discussion. Authenticity and consistency. It's really about being consistent in the application of the disciplines that you are undertaking. And it's the discipline to do the right thing over and over and over again, and to disincentivize those behaviors you don't want repetitively, not letting one person get away with it and one person not get away with it. It's consistency in the application of discipline.
Well, and it's funny that you say consistency because, everyone talks about like knowing the three things that like you have three things kind of set on your phone or in your notes or on a task list to like start your day. And that like just doing that little thing every day is repetition. Making your bed every day is like repetition and consistency. And I feel like that's a word that's been so prominent in my current season of life right now.
Right.
I think that's really just been spoken over me, like consistency. And I'm doing something right now in my life to really just integrate consistency. So I think that's a really cool point that you touched on. And it's how that you operate your personal life that carries over into your professional life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's right. I think the consistency, the authenticity is important, but transparency is another word that comes to mind. It kind of ties back to your authenticity examples, and I really think that at the end of the day, the transparency with your employees is critical. So if you're having a tough quarter in earnings, being transparent with them, being consistent with them, being authentic with them, being vulnerable with them is really important, right? Mm-hmm. I think those are some really critical keys that our listeners should take away from this. That I'll say again, transparency, consistency, authenticity. Being that person that people go, he's not a bullshitter. He's not making it up. She's telling me the truth.
And I think that's something I know about the way that you run your teams. Like I'm in and out of the office. I work for a separate entity of your businesses, but how have you really kind of ingrained that into your team that they know that about you and that it's not something that they ever have to question?
But it's through the word consistency. When my team performs, I consistently bonus them. When my team doesn't perform, we have consistent discussions and authentic, open, honest discussions about why we missed our goals. And you know what? I mean, goals are great, and they have to be pursued with vigor, and we do. But there are times we fail. We just fail to meet our objectives. And Mike Tyson once said it. He said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the fucking face. And, so you got the plan. You go into the quarterly meeting, and you say, this is the plan for the quarter. And everybody's on board with it. And all of a sudden, a tornado happens in the Midwest, wipes out half a neighborhood that you were going to build in. So, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Then you got to adapt.
Oh, I completely agree. I think, and you brought on another good point. I think what really separates a good leader from a great leader is how they give feedback to their people. And that's something that you just mentioned. And it's, are you giving them kind of like are you just telling them what they did wrong? Or are you giving them a plan of attack to get back to the goal, move in, and not just like hit the goal, but surpass the goal. Are you motivating them? Are you challenging them? Are you showing up for your people? Are you leading by example? I think feedback is such an integral piece because I think my generation is kind of soft in that area where they're like, well, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. Well, do you want to make them a better professional, or are you more concerned with how they feel?
You know what? That's a really good point, Britt, because you guys are kind of the marshmallow era, where you're soft and they don't like critical feedback. Yeah. It's taken offensively almost. But you bring up a super point, which is feedback is part of that consistency and authenticity. Yeah. So I always say to my people, if you're firing somebody and it comes as a surprise to that person, you've not led well.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you haven't provided them the feedback and the opportunity to fix the problem. Yeah. And so I will generally override a termination if that's the case. Mm-hmm. But you bring up a great point, Britt. Feedback is absolutely critical. Then I wanted to, let me ask you something. When you think of great leaders that inspire you, who comes to mind?
That's so funny. I literally have the same question written down for you. I was like, who are your mentors?
Okay, I'll go first. Okay, so I think of Ronald
Reagan. You've been around longer, so you have more to choose from.
A lot longer. Ronald Reagan was definitely one of my favorite leaders. Forget political party. Yeah. He was just a great frickin' leader. I think of Steve Jobs at Apple. Great leader. Left behind an amazing legacy. I think of Warren Buffett, Warren Buffett, I built all my equity models based on Warren Buffett's philosophies and sticking true to those philosophies. And the definition of authentic is Warren Buffett. He calls his airplane the indefensible, and he calls it the indefensible because it's a $50 million plane or whatever it is, and he just decides that it's not a defensible asset that he should be buying, but he does it anyway. Because his time is so valuable, but he's authentic. He's like, this is the indefensible.
Yeah.
So Warren Buffett's definitely up there. Steve Jobs, Ronald Reagan. Those are my top three.
I can't even say like I have a top three because I'm still young in my professional career, and I feel like as I've evolved as a leader, that too has evolved. And I would say in terms of consistency. For leadership, you have always been something like that for me. I'm not, blowing smoke up your ass or anything, but
you don't have a habit of doing that.
I don't have a habit of doing it, but you also know because of that, I think I'm very careful with who I'm putting kind of up there, not putting you on a pedestal, but saying like in terms of great leadership. And I told you this before going out into my professional career, I would not work for you. I was very dead set on not working for you.
I remember.
And I explained this because so many people had the expectation that I would. And I'm like, no, I need to go make my own way. I need to learn under different people. So if I were to ever work for you, I could, bring value back, but look at you in a different capacity to honor your leadership and to really learn from you and to separate, that daughter and that professional kind of mindset. So it's why I do honor you as a leader, because the people that I've learned from, I don't want to say they aren't as consistent as you are as a leader, but you know how to lead with vulnerability, be authentic, and give really constructive feedback in a way that inspires and motivates people that I haven't seen truthfully across the board in terms of my professional career.
Thank you. Where I learned that is you learn that through making mistakes.
Yeah.
Like when I was a young leader in that Fortune company, I would make big time mistakes. Like, I'd yell at somebody in public as an example, and you never yell at somebody in public. You never yell at anybody anyway. If you're going to have a tough conversation with them, you do it in private behind closed doors. Yeah. So the way I became a great leader was failing my way to success. I had to learn, talking about being authentic, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I just literally failed my way to success. I made a mistake and I learned. I made a mistake and I learned. I made a mistake and I learned. And so that led me to place of a word I'm going to use that's very strong, rarely used in the corporate world, called love. I learned that you have to love your people more than you love the business. You have to love your people more than success. If you love your people, you will do things for them that you wouldn't do for somebody you don't love, right? So if you love your people, you will be willing to do things for them that you wouldn't do for other people.
1,000%.
So I don't want to sound all soft and mushy, but
no.
But love your people. if you're going to be a leader, you fucking better love your people, because if you don't, they're going to know it. And if so everybody in my companies are owners. I make them owners. If you treat them like employees, they're going to act like employees. If you treat them like owners, they're going to act like owners. Yeah.
Well, and even with the teams that I led with the corporate retailer that I had, like I ran a team of all men minus 2 women that were twice my age. So talk about being like a 22-year-old coming onto a team of all men.
Yeah.
And then my next step was a team of all women twice my age, all people who were $1 million sellers with the company. But the thing that I showed them that they hadn't had with past management was love. Like I showed them, like, I'm going to give you what you need to be successful, but I'm also going to hold you accountable.
Amen.
And I'm going to let you know when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. But when it comes down to, getting the work done, I'm going to get down on the ground with you and we're going to do it together. So I show you how to do it. So you know that whatever I'm telling you to do, I'm not above doing it myself. I'm the leader because I can do it and I can probably do it better than you can. But there's a reason I'm leaders, because I have the vision to lead this team. I have a skill set where I can flex that style to really motivate each person. I think that's important with leadership too, is flexing to each person's learning style.
Right.
So they're able to be successul, to contribute.
You bring up a really valid point. I used to, when I was at the company, the big company, not my own, although I do it at my own company as well, I would walk by and the phones would be ringing and ringing and ringing. And I would just pick up a phone. And I was the vice president worldwide. Yeah. I go, good morning. This is Matt. How can I help you? And you know what? A leader leads by example, right? That's another thing. A leader is willing to do the work that he asks his people to do. Yeah. So he's not above it, right? No.
And that's something I think we both have consistently showed our people. And it's something that they intrinsically know about you. Like, that's not even like, they don't have to question that. Right. And each time they look at you, and maybe people naturally forget things, and they're like, oh, they're just telling me something, there's something to do, that I have to do something. Like, no. Like, I would go and I would full denim, I would rework an entire, I would re-merchandise. I'd show them, like, this is what I want it to look like. Like, be a shopkeeper, be an owner, like, own your space. And guess what? People naturally gravitate to people that are busy. So I'm like, if you're working on something, you'll probably end up getting more sales, because people are drawn to people that aren't standing around. That's more intimidating, going up to someone that's just standing upright and clocking everybody, right, versus someone who's busy and loving their work and loving what they do. That's approachable.
Right. I agree with you.
It's that customer service mentality that you're showing and carrying over from just picking up the phones.
There's that book, Total Customer Service.
Yes.
You read that, right?
No, but I haven't. It's on my...
I only gave it to you 2 years ago.
I know. Well, I have like 2 stacks of books, like my stack that I've read, my stack that I'm reading through, and then that's all
the stack that Dad gave you that you're never going to read.
No, I've read so many of them, but I have, just like all the packages that I've ordered from Amazon are just books that I want to like rip through this year. But all the books that you have given me, those aren't like books that you quickly read through. Those are things you have to consistently go back to in your life. In total customer service, even if you're not in a, customer facing role, like a people facing role at all times, I think that's keeping people at the center of what you do is what's important. That's the takeaway from that book. And I don't have to read that to understand that.
Yeah. But most people think leadership is about power. Yeah. Like, I have power over you, therefore I'm the leader. Yeah. That's the furthest thing from a leader.
And I've heard people coach and give feedback and say, like, because I'm your leader, this is what you have to do. Or like, because I'm the blah, blah.
Totally wrong-headed.
Yeah.
Totally wrong-headed. And we think about, creating a culture of love and respect. Mm-hmm. So the people who are in the following capacity of, call it, an employee, I hate using the word employee, but employee, if they know about that you're a servant leader.
I love that word.
Well, but it's so good, because servant leadership is about giving of yourself and not asking your employees to do anything you wouldn't do, and putting yourself out there authentically. And I think that being a servant leader, it's everything. Because then you're building a culture of love and respect. You're serving your people, and you're you're loving them by showing them, that you're willing to do the work with them by their side. And it's important, I think, that a culture of love and respect be built.
Yeah. And I think through doing those things, like, I'm turning this into a question. Do you think through being a servant leader, you're cultivating the next generation of leaders? Like, you're showing them like what that looks like? Because my personal philosophy that I've kind of taken through reading Phil Pringle's book on discipleship, it's more of a, faith-based book, but he writes about leadership, and the fruit of leaders is producing more leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really, really cool. So I think by like being authentic, being a servant leader, like all of those things that we've talked about so far, do you think that produces more leaders?
Absolutely. In business, we call it a succession plan, right? So the leader is grooming the next level of leaders down below. So what you try to do, if you're a very good executive and you're not just trying to hang on for the money, you try to work yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
And you work yourself out of a job by teaching the people below you how to run the organization at your level. So the guy below you takes your job, and you hopefully go up to the next level. But yeah, I absolutely believe that. And I think that the next generation of leaders are only going to learn if they're in a culture of love and respect. Yeah. They're only going to be willing to engage and be vulnerable if you're willing to engage and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree. I mean, I sent you a text like a couple weeks ago. Like I was at church service and I was listening to Pastor Mark Francie speak, and he was doing a series called Training Shepherds. And it's pretty cool because he was saying, like, biblically speaking, Moses had to train Joshua, to bring him up. And I think what I'm getting at here is shepherds train shepherds, leaders bring up leaders. And where one leader may be doing incredible things, there's someone else that's like, that does a lot of the groundwork to pave the way for the next person to come through. But the leadership isn't going to look the same. It never does. But I think there's learned skills that are passed down to the next generation. And then with that new kind of combination with that new person, I think, I think it's very dynamic.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The other word that comes to my mind is trust.
Yeah.
Your employees and your associates have to trust you. And to trust you means you have to be out in front, leading, putting yourself out there, showing them that you are trustworthy, that you're not going to, you're in a meeting and the chairman of the board says, this presentation sucks, you guys are off, and you're the vice president, and then you got your director below you in the meeting, and then you look at your director and go, you fucked up. I mean, there's no trust there. He will never trust you again.
Yeah.
So the trust factor is, I'm going to take the rap for this. Sure. I'm going to step up and protect you. And then your people will take bullets for you.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's something that it's so true. Like, there's plenty of times I can think of, like, when I was working for my corporate retail company, that I would go to upper management and fully knowing my employees or sales associates had made a mistake. And I'm like, I'm going to brunt this for you because the leader before me did that for me.
Right.
And they taught me that. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, and that made me want to work harder for them because they're like, I'm going to take this on for you. And that's also servant leadership. But kind of on the flip side of coin, do you think it's okay to admit you're wrong when you're a leader? Because when I was in corporate retail, they told leadership, do not ever admit you're wrong. And I think it was more, and I know it's more within the mindset of, lawsuits and, an employee coming back. So if it is okay to admit when you're wrong to an employee, when is it okay to do that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. In Watergate, which was way before your time with Richard Nixon, the cover-up is always worse than the crime.
Yeah.
So if you do something wrong, your employees know it.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows it. The only one who doesn't know it is either you because you're too stupid or arrogant to look at it and admit it, or your bosses who are too far removed from it. But in truth, the faster you can admit you were wrong, the faster you can get on with the solution, right? So I think my theory has been admit it quickly, admit it authentically, admit it to everybody who's involved, and yet that builds that trust. That builds that authenticity. It's like, if he's willing to come in and say, I screwed up, then I can do that.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, if you don't do that, what happens is employees will take a $100,000 mistake that they made, and they'll bury it with a $200,000 cover-up. But if it's okay to admit you made a mistake, you can get on with not covering it up, and you're authentic about it, you can get on with a solution.
So what you're saying is, essentially, as a leader, mistakes are costly, but trying to cover up mistakes is more costly.
Absolutely. And in so many ways, though, Britt, because it's not just cost and money, it's cost in your authenticity, it's cost in your consistency in the application of the consistency, and your reputation. It costs your reputation. And as a leader, your reputation is everything.
Yeah.
They've got to trust you.
Yeah, I agree. That's really good.
It's really true.
No, it is really true. But I think I want to switch gears here and just kind of ask, like, we both have read Start With Why.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of leadership, your team needs to know your why.
Yeah.
As much as they have to have their own why.
Correct.
So how have you led your teams? Like, would you say that your teams know your why, have always known your why, and then operate with their own sense of why on top of that to accomplish the goals you've set?
So
it's a very multi-layered
Simon
question.
wrote a great book.
Yeah, he did.
Kudos, Simon. Everybody's always known my why. My why is I'm building an empire so I can help the rest of the people in the world that are suffering. So my goal is to help people who are poor, people who are homeless, hungry, have mental health issues. That's my why. And everybody in the company knows I don't need money. I got tons of money. But I make more money with the Make More podcast. I make more money so we can help more people.
Yeah.
You know, that's my whole goal in life. I don't give a shit about owning another house. You know, we own plenty of houses. We don't need that. We need to help more people. And we've got the resources to do it. And the more money we make, the more people we can help. So my people know my why. They've always known my why. They've always known my heart. And the why is the heart of the matter. It's why, you know, what is your why? My why is I want to help more people. I want to give more. I want to help more. You know, so my people have always known my why. My why is consistent. It does not change from day to day, and it's not going to change.
And as we read and, you know, Start With Why, that why needs to be so consistent and transcend across generations like Apple. Because I think what most companies and leaders fail at is making the what their why.
Yes.
It's not what you do that makes you who you are. It's why you do what
100%.
you do.
Yeah.
And you see, you know, a company like Apple, and that's like the biggest example in that book. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
Apple is constantly innovating.
Because Steve Jobs said, I want to put a computer, I think it was Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
I want to
on every person's desk.
I want to put a computer on every person's desk.
Yeah.
That was his why.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and Walmart's why is we want to deliver low prices to everybody every day, you know?
Yeah.
So everybody knows their why. And I think that's a great point.
Okay. I want to say, what would you say, if you can't name three, what is the biggest way your style of leadership has changed, or at least the three biggest ways your style of leadership has changed, maybe from the time you were on the board of finance at San Diego State or growing up through your corporate retail company before you were vice president? Like, how has that changed?
It's evolved.
Yeah.
So it's been an evolution. And I said earlier on, I failed my way to success. So when I was younger, I thought leadership was about power and ego and power over people. And so I started that way. Well, that didn't work well at all. So I evolved to learn. It was a process of learning by making mistakes.
Yeah.
And, you know, unfortunately for me, that's the way I learned best. And so it became from a self-centered, selfish, egocentric leadership style to a servant leadership style.
Do you remember the moment that changed?
Yeah. You know, when I started my own company and I had my first few employees, I realized that they were willing to work as hard as I was willing to work.
So that took leaving the corporate retail company for you to understand that?
I wouldn't say that. I would say I worked at the corporate level and I worked my way up over 14 years. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way there too. Because humans are humans. It doesn't matter whether they're in a corporate setting or a mom and pop setting.
Yeah.
Humans are humans. They have emotions, they have feelings, they have problems, and they need somebody they can look to and respect. You know, so my employees know that they can come to me with their personal problems, and I'm not going to hold it against them or rat them out or share that with anybody else. I'm trustworthy, and that's what they know. So they know they can come to me if they need a down payment on a house and they want to borrow money and we make a deal. I don't talk about that in the office with anybody else. Mm-hmm.
By the way, that's not normal either, that a boss would be willing to do that for his employees. It's pretty special.
We've helped a lot of our employees, and probably there isn't one that we haven't helped. But because people have needs, and how much do you think they give back to the company when you give out to them and you take care of them?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
And even in my own corporate setting, obviously I don't have my own business like you do, but I even saw that in a corporate setting. When people wanted time off to just go and live their life. I'm like, I don't want you limited to the walls of retail. I want you to come in here. I want you to feel rejuvenated. I want you to kick butt when you're in here. But I also want you to spend time with your families. Like, I would send employees home all the time. And maybe when it wasn't necessarily warranted, or I would kind of help them manipulate whatever time they had to give them as much time off as we were able to allot them with how much time they had in their little bank.
Because you realize the benefit.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, really? You would do that for me? I'm like, yeah. Like, what do you think? I'm not going to do that for myself? In a corporate setting, too, I'm like, whatever I want for myself, I want that for you as well. I want to live a high-quality life. So when I'm here, I'm working hard to improve not just, the environment and my employees' lives, but, even for the customer. When I'm at my best, everyone else is at their best.
Don't you think also, that's kind of a loaded question, but I think because of MBA programs, because of business degrees, people get out of school and they tend to overcomplicate leadership. They think
completely.
Right?
Honestly, it's pretty annoying. People write books, do movies, do other podcasts on it, and it's like, I mean, there's full industries on it. I would say, not to shame anyone in it, but I think the network marketing industry is really big on this kind of fluffy, really overly exaggerated idea of leadership. And that there's no shame to people within that industry. Tony Robbins is in that industry and he's amazing. Everybody loves Tony Robbins and he's incredible. But I think typically people overcomplicate the idea of leadership. They really do.
It's really a simple formula.
And it's the idea of I think people really like the sound of their own voices, and that's kind of where it comes from. And it's like, well, if I can kind of find this new niche or idea, it's almost like giving a sermon. People try to pull out something so different and niche, and it's like, okay, yeah, we've heard this before, but now you're attaching special lingo or a personal anecdote to make it really sound more than what it is.
They do it all the time.
All the time. Yeah. And I'm like, no, nobody likes that.
You know what the worst thing is in a company? One of the worst things is management has this priority today, then it shifts tomorrow to this priority, and then the next day is this priority. And by the third day, everybody's forgotten what the first priority is.
Yeah.
Because there's no consistency, and the leadership just sucks.
Oh, I know. I would agree. It's just big fat.
Yeah. But servant leadership is the way to go.
I think I'm gonna rapid fire a couple of leadership questions at you.
Do it.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You're buckled in?
Buckled in.
Okay, sit down. So, biggest mistake most young leaders make?
The biggest mistake most young leaders make is they make it about themselves.
Okay. What makes a good leader versus a great leader?
A good leader versus a great leader? A great leader is willing to fall on the sword for his people. A good leader is somebody who's just good and effective manager. But a great leader is somebody who recognizes talent, brings the talent up through the organization, helps them grow and achieve their career goals, and when there's a big mistake, he falls on the sword for his people.
So, I like that. And it's true.
It's true.
So do you know why your style of leadership works?
Because it's authentic and it's consistent and it's honest, and I love my people and I love my employee. I mean, everything we've talked about, I incorporate into all my leadership every day. It never changes. My style never changes. And my people know, I mean, my people will fall on a sword for me because I will fall on a sword and have for them. Yeah. If they have needs that they can't meet, they know they can come to me. There's a very high probability I'm going to help them. And so they know that. And so I think that's the difference. A great leader loves his people, loves his people. You may not like their behavior at times. You may not like them and not want to hang out and have a beer with them, but you better love them, because if you don't, they're going to leave. And turnover is hugely expensive.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I know we answered that question already, but I had to make sure you're being authentic and consistent. just had to check.
Smart ass.
Because you're the leader, do you think it means needing to be the best at what you do while also having the ability to vision cast? Do
I have to be the best at what I do? The answer is no.
No.
And I'm not, and all my employees will tell you I'm not the best at what I do. Talk about being, authentic and transparent. The reality is that I am not the best at what I do. So in my retail company, John Belinek is the best at what we do.
He's incredible.
Yeah, he's incredible.
But I think I like that you said that, because thank you. That is authentic. But I think when most people look at you, like when I have, friends or there are adults who are talking to me about you, I think they're naturally going to assume that you are the best at what you do. I think that is a common idea, that because you're the leader, you're the best.
That is wrong. It's wrong. I'm perceived to be the best at what I do because my people make me look good. And you know what? They make me look good because we work together as a team. Mm-hmm. And I've got their back. And they know, like, here's an example. I retired at 42 years old.
I love this story.
And I was done. And as you know, I was bored.
Yeah.
I was so bored, I went and started 3 more companies. And it was just like...
So casual. I just went and started 3 more companies. Like, everyone does that, like putting on a t-shirt for the day. Well, yeah, I was bored at 42 playing golf, and I just started 3 more companies. And it took going out and hiring the right people, finding the right people, and building a culture of trust that they would come work for me. And it worked wonderfully. So that's kind of my next question. Someone listening might be nervous about hiring somebody, and you just kind of touched on it for a second. What do you look for when you hire people? So I think that's like a lot of people struggle within the area the same as they do with firing someone. So what are the 3 qualities you think you look for when you hire somebody, knowing that they're going to be a great fit for your company?
Integrity is number 1.
Okay.
If you don't have integrity, you have nothing. If you don't have integrity, you have nothing.
Okay.
Integrity, energy. They've got to have the energy to carry the mission forward. Mm-hmm. So integrity is number 1. Energy is number 2. And the third one I would probably say is transparency. So
how are you able to discern that in the questions that you're asking in an interview when hiring somebody?
Ask them the tough questions, like you've asked me. What's your biggest mistake been? And they go, well, my biggest mistake was not accepting this one job. Well, you got a bullshit answer. I mean, he's had bigger mistakes than that, more important mistakes. You're looking for the right answers. So that's one question. The other thing I look for when I'm hiring somebody, so I said integrity and energy. I ask them what's their biggest failure. Because if they're willing to share their biggest failure, and then the follow-up question is, what did you learn from it? Because you want to hire somebody who is willing to you want them to take chances, right? The only way to make money is to take risk. So you don't want to disempower your people from taking risk by punishing them when they do make a mistake. Yeah. So you ask them, what was your biggest mistake, and what did you learn from it? And so the losers are the ones who say, I made a mistake in the stocking of shelves, and bullshit. Tell me, let's get real. He's out of there. That interview's over. Yeah. So integrity and energy are two of the biggest ones for me.
Well, let's be real. Most of the time when someone comes and sits down at the table, at least I think I kind of have that gift of discernment with people. You know in like 5 seconds if you're hiring them or not, just based on how they're walking in, their demeanor, like the energy that they're bringing in. And I'll be open. I'll be the first to say I'm wrong when I know or don't know. Yeah. I'm like, oh, wow. After listening to this person that I initially wrote off in my mind, I think I want to hire them. I've done that too. But I think for the most part, I am able to discern when someone's walking in. I'm like, yep, I'm going to hire them. There's been quite a couple people where I'm like, yeah, that's going to be a great hire.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you're interviewing them, you know, who they are. You'll figure it out real quick. Yeah. And if you're an intuitive personality like you are, I know you are. You know a bullshit artist when you see one.
Oh, yeah. I smell it from a mile away.
I mean, they had a stink on them that just, you can sense it and feel it.
So I think my last rapid fire kind of leadership question, do you think leadership is a learned skill or something that you're inherently born with? Because for me, I know it's something that I was born with. I can trace it back to multiple memories within my life from being very young, but you might not have the same answer.
So I think I don't think it's a mutually exclusive proposition. I think it's a combination. I think you're born with a propensity to lead, but it's a learned skill. Yeah. And you learn it through application, trial and error, and that's how you become a leader. Yeah. It's a learned skill, and there are people with innate, inbred, inborn skills of leadership. But if they don't fine tune it and hone it in, they're going to be, mediocre. Yeah. It's a combination.
Well, and I appreciate that answer because, as we both know, that is something that I've been born with, like the skill and the gift of leadership. But I had to really work to build that in the corporate industry. And when I first entered that company, you told me you have to get into leadership. And I'm like, why is he just so like on top of me about getting into freaking me? I don't even plan to be with this company for like 2 years. I'm out of here in 6 months. And that was during COVID. I was there for 3 years. Shame on me. But you're like, get into leadership. And I was in leadership within less than a year and promoted to each role within less of a year being in each role. But within leadership, I had to keep failing at certain things to really learn. I'm like, oh, this is how you coach people. This is how you reward people. This is how you motivate people. Okay, this is how you work with them. Oh, this is how, there's so many things that you have to learn through failing that make you a great leader, even if you're born with the skill of leadership. Yeah. And it was funny because I was sitting down with the store manager that basically hired me. And she was like, what is your idea on, leadership and on failure and succeeding? Because she's like, you did so well with this. You got it right off the bat. And I'm like, sometimes I'm a little nervous to succeed right off the bat because I don't know where I could have gone wrong. And I think sometimes, we're so quick to be like, yep, got it right, moving on. But say that same kind of situation comes up again, you may have gotten it right, you may have resolved a problem on the first try, but I'm like, sometimes most of the time I feel like I appreciate failing more because I know the multiple ways to get it wrong versus just the one way to get it right first. I think there's such value in that. And she just kind of sat there and she was like, you mean you like failing more than succeeding? I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying sometimes I'm a little nervous to just succeed on the first try because there's so much value in failing.
Yeah. So I want to share with you the third one. So I said intellect and integrity and energy were the two. And the third one is intellect. You got to have people who are smart, right? You can't fix stupid. So you got to have intellect, integrity, and energy as the three principles in hiring. And those three will help you hire the best people. But it is absolutely critical. I will say this again, and hear this loud and clear. If you don't love your people, you're going to suck as a leader. If you don't love your people, you are going to suck as a leader.
It's true.
If you don't create a culture of trust, integrity, honesty, openness, transparency, your culture will never be what it could be. You will always be a mediocre company. You know, the Good to Great book that was written, it touches on different aspects of that. But it's true, and I have found that to be true. So you hire for intellect, integrity, energy, and you create a culture of love, trust, transparency, integrity, consistency. Those things will make you a great leader, and people will follow you and take a hill. I mean, think about it. So when a platoon commander says to his troops who are down in the trench, we're going to take the hill, and they know that he's going to turn tail and run, the minute he says, charge, are they going to charge? Fuck no. They're going to run back down the hill and hide behind him. Yeah. So it's really about the consistency and the trust factor that the troops have in you. And it's up to you to develop that trust.
Yeah, and let's just be frank and say that's not something that develops within a month or even 2 months. I would say it takes about 6 months for that really to deeply, deeply resonate with people. And they're like, yeah, now we're on a rhythm.
Are you saying it would take 6 months for the trust to develop?
No, not necessarily the trust, but once you have that trust, but to have a really well-oiled working rhythm kind of machine, once that trust is developed. But it's so important. And I feel like at that point, that's when I start seeing those results.
I would have a little different take.
Really?
Yeah, I would just say it takes years and consistency of application for your people to really, really trust you. I mean, it's like going into a relationship with somebody, a boyfriend, girlfriend. I mean, you don't build that trust in that relationship in 6 months. I mean, you truthfully, you don't know who you got for 2 years, That's fair. Because all their flaws come out after the honeymoon period. Well, the same is true in business. You got employees and you don't know where their warts are until you put them in the position to work. But if you hire, like I said, for intellect, integrity, and energy, you got 3 of the primary keys in the door. So, yeah. I wanted to ask you a question. So.
Oh, my turn.
Yeah, this isn't a rapid fire one, but this is just one for follow up. We did a segment on real estate, and we had a lot of great feedback from that one.
Yeah, that one was fun to talk about.
So where are you right now?
Well, closing.
Closing time.
Wow, look at you. We got you singing too.
Hey,
you can do it all.
I can do it all, baby.
Yeah, closing documents have been signed.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I'm kind of worn out. It's been a whole long
Okay, so this is really interesting that you said.
I'm tired.
It's almost anticlimactic, isn't it?
It's so anticlimactic. I'm like,
oh, it's so fucking much. All the paperwork and all the hassle and
the back and forth.
The back and forth. It's like what started out as an exciting proposition is a pain in the ass.
And so, it's kind of funny because I always forget that I'm in buying a condo and everyone's like, congrats. I'm like, what? Huh? I'm like, oh, thanks. I'm not even really thinking about it. And I've had people text me or because I posted our episode on LinkedIn. I'm looking at some comments. I'm like, congrats on the condo, Britt. I'm like, what? I'm just so out of it. I'm like, huh?
Well, it's been just such a long, tedious process. And so you think over at Heslin Holdings, we're buying 20 deals a year.
And that's what you're doing.
And you sit in those meetings. You sit in those real estate meetings, and you're like, the same fucking news every week because
same news every week because nobody moves and they need to move.
The city's not moving.
Though, it's the city.
It's the cities, it's the tenants, it's the engineers, it's the architects. Everybody takes their damn time, and you're sitting there as the owner going, "Is this ever going to end?" so I figured you would say that it's anticlimactic.
It's so anticlimactic, and I'm just sitting here, I'm like, we're done. like we're done. I was like, thank God. I'm like,
okay, but wait.
But now I'm like, shit, I have to look for furniture. I'm like, no. And everyone's like, that's the fun part. I'm like, I'm kind of worn out. Let's just take a break here.
So you had one experience I think you should share.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the process, obviously you're saying you're closing. You were telling me the other day that your bank had said they would fund it and then pulled back their commitment. So you were going to pay cash for it. And then tell me what happened after that.
Well, essentially, we have a strong line of credit with that bank. And we've had that with them for generations. and the amount of deals that your company does with them is incredible. So it's like we're well known with this bank. We're well established. We have good credit. We give them good business.
Amen.
And, you know, a bank wants and does give money to people with those who have money. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Like,
the banks like to lend money to people who have money.
Yes. That's why it's so difficult to get a loan if you really don't have money.
Yeah. That's the irony, isn't it?
That is the irony. And the system isn't made really for people without money to succeed. It kind of sucks. But either way, this bank just kind of steamrolled us in the sense that, like, they just kept asking for, I think, K1s that had information that wasn't for them to know, that would put other people at risk.
Our other investors.
Yeah, our other investors that would put them, I didn't know if I was okay to say that, but, you know, that would put other people at risk. And it really wasn't relevant to my condo.
Right.
I'm like, you're talking about acres of land, parcels of just shopping center real estate, like multifamily properties. I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with a condo?
With my loan.
With my loan that I'm trying to take out.
And so they pulled back on you, right? And said they weren't going to fund it?
No, we pulled back.
Okay.
Like,
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So you basically told them to go pound sand.
Yeah. We said, eat my dust. Like, go eat sand. Go kick rocks. And they came back, like a day or two ago, and they're like, wait.
We'll fund
it.
Because they didn't want to lose the rest of the business.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, and thank God for our financial advisor. Like, going back to like one of our first podcasts together, we talk about the importance of having someone that has your back when developing an investment portfolio, someone that really truly shares your values and your morals when it comes to finance and investing and giving back, all of that. And he completely had our back. He went to his higher ups and he was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I have X amount of dollars with Matt, with his daughter, with their whole family, with their extended family. You are royally messing this up. Royally. And I would say he is probably the key factor in that as to why they came back and said, like, oh, okay, yeah, we want to finance this. Because I think we would have been, you know, just like, okay, whatever, cash, that's fine.
Yeah, they want to make money making the loan.
They do.
For somebody who doesn't need the money.
Yeah.
And yet here they are saying, pulling back. And so you said, fuck you, we're going to do it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just, first and foremost, it was really, you don't really want to take it personally, but based on the business that's been done, the amount of money that's within their bank, it was kind of insulting.
Yeah.
It was insulting. It's just like, there's been so much that's been done on our end to give you business, and then this is just kind of how we're paid back. And I think it shows even at the corporate executive level within, you know, the banking industry, people aren't always thinking. And it's like, are you doing your research on the people that are trying to take out a loan with you? Like, just a simple loan, and you're getting all this business from us through real estate properties? I'm like, are you not doing your due diligence? Are you not checking who you're banking with?
Well, but I think that's what happens. Is some low-level employee at the bank is tasked with underwriting the loan, and then he says, these guys are good to go, man. They've got lines of credit with us. They got tens of millions of dollars in our bank, and we need to make up this loan. And then all of a sudden he goes, you know, the uppers management is concerned about your K1s, and he says, you've got about 100 properties, and your K1s, we need all of them.
So I think that just the biggest takeaway from my first buyer's experience is that told the bank that I'm walking away, and they were like, oh, you know, sometimes I think there's a lesson to be learned in
being willing to walk away.
Yeah, exactly. Being willing to walk away and putting your stake in the ground.
That's the line.
Yeah, that's the line. And that's, I think, something that I've learned more from a faith perspective is like, when you're told to wait. When you're told to drop it. And there's always a reason why. There's always a reason why, because guess what? More than half the time it comes back to you in a different way, and it works out in your favor. And then if it wasn't supposed to, then it wasn't supposed to. But kind of on that, I guess, that faith note, how this is kind of panning back to leadership. how do you let God lead you in leading your teams? And how have you let him be part of that? Because your faith is so integral to your life. I'm just curious how you've let him be part of that.
Yeah, my faith is everything. And, really turning from a faith-based perspective, okay?
Yeah.
So turning to God in times of trouble, when there's discontinuity in the organization or there's a lack of cohesion, amongst the team, I'll turn and just ask God to light the path. And because God speaks to me in multiple ways, never audibly, but verbally, I get a message in my head, and so I turn and ask for leadership guidance because I'm not smart enough, and I found that His plan is always better than my plan. I have a plan, and I just use His plan. I want to go back to a point you made that we were discussing earlier about young leaders, and inspiring leaders. And you asked me the question, what is the one mistake that young leaders make? So if there's one thing it is that young leaders do, and I did it too, is that they make it about themselves rather than making it about their people. Mm-hmm. It's my ego. It's my office. I've got the corner office. I'm the big shit. Fuck you. Do what I tell you to do. And you know what? That's their biggest mistake. Because then what have they lost? They've lost authenticity. They've lost trust. They've lost everything. Because everybody's like, what a dick.
Yeah.
I don't work for that guy. But I think the biggest mistake that they make is not to love their people. They don't know what they don't know. And I will say it again. If you don't love your people, you will be a shit leader. Because there's no way people are going to work for you and fall on a sword for you and put all their energy into it if you mistreat them. And so I think the ego is the biggest challenge that gets in the way. But that's where, that servant leadership we were talking about and turning to God and saying, I need help leading this group. And you'll get the messages. I think it's really important, though, that people understand that leadership, the last thing leadership is about self. It's not about self.
Selfless. And that's, still being a young leader. And, I got my first leadership position at 22. I came in and I did make it about myself for a minute. I really did. And I'm like, why am I not part of this meeting? Why don't I get to meet this person? Right. Why do I have to go and do this? And you have to change your thinking and your perspective of why do I have to? It's no, I get to.
Right.
And I swear.
It's an opportunity.
Everything is an opportunity because guess what? The right people come in at the right time and they notice you doing the right thing even when it feels just like monotonous. All it takes is one higher up to see you and they're like, wow, you're in management and you're doing this. Your actions say way more than your words ever could getting the opportunity to talk to certain people, and you answered I don't know if you realize this, you answered both questions at the same time. The biggest mistake young leaders make and also inviting God into your business, love. It's the common denominator of both of those questions.
It really is.
It is. And that's what I wanted to tell you is that that's something that I was lucky, I think, to learn extremely early on. And what made me successful in my roles at that retail company was really loving my people in a way that they were not before or at all. And it's what transformed my teams and the dynamic and the environment and made them willing to work even harder, even when I wasn't there, when I was on vacation, if I was sick. I tried my best not to take time off if I could help it. I think you really instilled that in me. Obviously take time off when it's awarded, but to let your people know that you're there and available, but to just love them and to be appreciated for even the small things that they do.
Well, the other thing...
And they really felt appreciated.
The other thing I think young leaders do that is really tragic is that they take credit for other people's work.
Oh, that is the worst.
I mean, that is the worst.
I've seen that happen, and the look on somebody else's employees' faces, like, it's kind of heartbreaking. They're like,
I did that work, and you're taking my credit.
It's so bad. That is probably the worst thing that you could do. I've seen it happen, and it sucks. It's happened to me, but to see it happen to other people on, like, maybe a different team, you're just like,
if you,
wow.
you're the kind of person who takes credit for other people's work, somebody who's insecure in their position, selfish, self-centered, arrogant, egotistical, ladder climbing person.
Well, someone that probably doesn't even do the work to begin with, that can't.
Yeah. So that's why they take the credit. So they look good in front of their superiors.
But it's crazy because it's like, do you not know that those higher ups know that? They know that.
And so do all your peers.
Yes. I just like, I looked at some people in leadership, and I've, seen it happen. I'm like, you don't think they don't know that? Yeah. They're running this entire entity. I'm like, yeah, they have your eyeball on you in management. They know you didn't do that. They know how you run your day, how you operate, and how you run your teams.
So I think we've given our listeners a lot to really hone in on, to put together in their own leadership capacities, a style that incorporates integrity, love, trust, consistency, transparency, authenticity. It gives them the why of what they're doing.
I think
what's your why?
One more thing I want to touch on.
Yeah.
How do you feel about involving your employees in creative solutions?
You know what?
That's the last thing that just came to mind. I think that's...
So here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
In my company, I don't allow any put downs of people who come up with ideas. So if you're the lowest person on the totem pole and you have an idea, I fucking want to hear it.
Yeah.
We had an instance in our company where one of the lower ranking people in the organization, and I mean lower ranking, just their position, offered a solution, and one of the superiors said, that's a stupid idea. And I said, you know what? Get the fuck out. Get out now. I want to talk to you. Get down the hall.
Wow.
Took him to my office. I said, you will get your fucking ass back in there. You will apologize. You will say you were wrong, that we want to hear your ideas. And you know what? This person comes up with a lot of crazy, great ideas. And if you stump that, and you truncate that by putting her down, when she does maybe make a solution or idea that's not going to work, who gives a shit? I mean, she's given us millions of great ideas.
Yeah.
So that's another one that young people make a mistake of doing. They take credit for other people's work. They make it about themselves. They're selfish and self-centered. They take, and put people down when they make a mistake or they come up with a solution that doesn't work. That's a very egregious and young person's mistake.
Yeah, I think that was important to touch on because I was listening to the Lex Friedman podcast with Jeff Bezos because, as you know, Jeff Bezos rarely does interviews, but he was talking about how he runs his meetings. And he said, instead of sending out like a weekly memorandum, he has it just really well prepared and written out. So everyone takes about 30 minutes to look over the agenda about what's to be talked about, kind of what's on there, because people are busy within the week. And if you send out the memorandum, they're either not going to look at it or they're going to skim it. And maybe one or two people are going to completely read through it. So what he does, and I thought this was phenomenal. I'm like, wow, that's actually very ingenious. Like, I really appreciate this, how much thought went into leading his team. He has the memorandums all written out. And he actually lets, starting with the lowest ranking people in the room, kind of spew out their ideas and then works up the chain. But he sits back as the leader and he reserves everything that he says so people aren't influenced by his thoughts and how he would resolve the situation. So he's creating an environment of collaboration, but where the higher ups have to listen to people low ranking on the totem pole that might have a better idea and just creative solutions that they wouldn't have thought of because they've done what they've done for as long as they've done it. And I think that's so important as a leader, knowing when to step back, because people will withhold their ideas on solutions based on your opinion. especially the lower ranking people and the executives, because, you know, they want that.
Especially if you reject their opinion as stupid or foolish or whatever, that is going to absolutely shut them down.
Yeah.
I had a management philosophy when I was running these retail stores, a chain of retail stores. That whenever I walked into a store, everybody knew that the boss was in the store, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody would want to come and talk to me. And I would always talk to the clerks in the store first. I would talk to the lowest ranking person in the store. The manager would be like, just stand back. I'll get with you. But I want to talk to the people who are running the store. Yeah. People who are cashiers, people who are mopping the floors. I want to talk to them. And I'm going to learn about your leadership style through them. Mm-hmm. So you better be a good manager, because I'm going to know. And I'm going to know because I'm going to talk to the people and make sure that there's no retribution. So I always got the facts. And I'd get rid of the bad managers. You know, I mean, the employees had no loyalty to them because they weren't good leaders.
Yeah. I like that too, because when I was working for my corporate retail company, that's what the executives did. They would go and talk to all the sales associates and say, like, how do you like it here? Like, are you new? Like, how long have you been with us? Like, what are you doing here? What have you learned? Are the sales accurately representative of, like, the clientele that you're getting in store? Like, how are you going about getting your business? Like, what do you do with your manager? Like, there are so many really cool questions that they would ask. And so as a manager, I would sit back, but I always made sure to usher my people directly to them, like, go and talk to them. Because you're also showing that, like, I don't have to go and talk to them. If they want to talk to me, they'll talk to me. But, like, you take an opportunity, you go talk to them. You need the exposure. And that's part of, you know, the idea of bringing up leaders with you, raising leaders as a leader, but also giving them that exposure and saying, I'm not afraid to show the executives of who I am as a manager and the environment that I've developed.
And, nothing will build more trust with your associates than when you introduce them to the boss and go, you know how we made our numbers last quarter?
This person.
Sally is the one.
Sally Sue over there.
Yeah, she's the one who made it happen, even though it may not be Sally Sue in entirety.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a collective team effort, but, like, you do want to introduce your front runners and the game changers that really make a dent in your business, that, like, just really contribute. Well,
Britt, sounds like we've covered a lot of material today. Thanks for coming on and sharing your insights and your questions. And you know what? You're always welcome to come on the show and drill me and grill me. And you know that I'm proud of you.
Thanks. Proud of you too. Glad I could be on here, but let's go get some more coffee. I'm kind of drained.
Me too.